The Backroom Podcast is brought to you by my friends at Shelby Auto Service in my hometown of Alabaster. 3 words I can think of for this group: established, reputable, and dependable. When it comes to auto service centers, none's better than Shelby Auto Service. And listen, the whole team, the entire team is ASE certified mechanics. Whether it's routine or a complicated service, they can handle it. ShelbyAutoservice.com to get more details. ShelbyAutoservice.com.
Hey everybody, welcome into the Backroom episode 2. We didn't get fired after the first one, so that's good.
You got a lot of teases in the first one, so...
a lot of teases.
Yeah.
One of those teases, I'm Jon Lunceford, by the way. Shane Heninger.
Sean.
Sean
Yep.
Heninger. You know him as Rockstar. Mm-hmm. And our fearless leader, our El Presidente, the man in charge.
Sounds fancy.
Who needs no introduction.
Jim Dunaway. No, Reade Taylor.
There we go.
He thinks he's in charge. What's up,
Hey,
Reade?
Jim or me?
Jim thinks he's in charge.
No, I just work here. I just work here.
There's certain ways we should do things. That's all I'm saying.
I'm just part of the team.
When he says we own the company, when Jim says it on the show, really Reade's the one that needs to make the decisions, not Jim. Reade is the guy.
He owns the gavel.
And Reade Taylor is relation to Lance Taylor, younger brother.
No shit.
That is
Couple years, man.
That's awesome.
But yeah, welcome to the back room. Welcome
Thanks
to
for having me on.
whatever this is.
I appreciate it. I'm excited.
Yeah, all right.
We've been trying to get this started for a while.
We have. Of course, we started it, and then Scott left. I have my phone in my pocket. I just got a junk call. So, anyway, we started it. Scott left. We'll still get to our first impression stories that we teased. We'll wait for him to get back. So, I'm curious what his first impression of Jim was, because he had to have met him through TV.
Oh, he knows
Brown, through 30 through 40 and everything. I don't know if he had met Lance. I'm sure he had. But first impressions of everybody, including us, as well. But, we talked about last week going to Louisville, all the guys going to Louisville, and what road shows are like and everything. That didn't quite work out the way we had planned.
Did not make it.
Did we pull the curtain back on what happened, or are we still...
On what happened?
What happened in Louisville on Friday? What our concern was throughout the show.
Oh yeah, so the camera we're shooting this on.
Because I don't think we
forgot about this.
We never mentioned it on the show.
Never mentioned on the show. The camera we're shooting this on, we have one really good camera that we use for pretty much everything. So on the road, they take this camera because we're not going to shoot anything here because the 3 talented people aren't here. So they took the camera and it's currently on battery power. Well, there's a little charger we use for it. Didn't take it. Left that sitting right in front of me, sitting over in Scott's spot doing the show. So it was full panic that morning. Jimmy Anthony took the charger to them.
He didn't get there till around tip-off. So
didn't get there till late, and we didn't even do a show Saturday morning. So ended up not needing it because Alabama lost. But they were terrified it was going to die at every break. They'd have to kill the power to the camera. Rocky would have to text him 30 seconds before the show, or
every commercial break. I'd have to give him a 30 seconds, because once you turn the camera back on, you got to let it reconnect and warm up, and you can't just instantly turn it on and have it be functioning. So that was a mistake we learned in the first break. So we ran on basically no juice to the very end. I think they tried to shoot a promo video at the last at about 1:15, and it died. So from 9 to 1:15, we were on like 10% battery the whole show. So that was a very stressful show to be a road show. Road shows are always the funnest, I think, in my opinion. I love them. I think they're all great.
I was about to say, those are your favorites.
They're always, nothing ever goes wrong. It's really easy troubleshooting. The day Lunceford's not here, I'm going to be in full panic attack.
I still think the best part of all those, like road shows, is Brown really never seems to be too rattled, but you can see it in Dunaway's eyes that he is very rattled.
Now, if you're curious what the setup is like on the road, none of us go on the road. I mean, there's the occasional time, depending on circumstances, we'll go. Especially Rocky, he'll go if they like the Regions tradition, like he went and interviewed people down on the tees and stuff like that. But for the most part, it's just the 3 of them. Nobody else goes because we all have to stay back here and run it. And Brown does, I'll say 99% of the work, because there will be one thing that Jim does, but he does 99% of the work. And it's good that he doesn't get rattled, because when things go wrong, he's the one that has to do 99% of the work to get it back going. But
And it's also it's to a fault. It's I guess it's a good trait to have and a bad trait to have. For example, when we had that remote in Uptown,
Southern,
yeah. We it was time. It was obviously not going to work. Things were not going to work. We couldn't fix it. It wasn't going to be a good show. So we had to pull the plug on it and come back here. Well, Brown is this mad scientist that says, "Well, let me try one more thing. He won't. I will fix this problem. Just give me a couple more minutes." And it's just the fact where it's a lost cause now. Dunaway's already left. We were thinking about doing Zoom hits, but like, just come back to the studio. And he's like, no. I got one more thing. It's just like, that kills another 30 minutes. Where he's like, I will figure it out. And it's like, no, don't be the hero. We need you to come. We need you here more than there now, because the decision has been made. And it's like, no, give me one more chance. I know it. I'm going to try one more thing. And so that was the thing that frustrates me. It's nice to have that go-get attitude, but there's a point where you need to throw the towel in and say, like, all right, this is not going to work today.
But I also think it's so interesting when they're on the road, because they all have that. Their personalities are so different,
which makes the show work.
It does. Yeah. It's. I mean, and you can kind of see it. You see, a couple are worried more than others. Some panic a little bit more.
Some linger.
And then you got Lance.
Who just walked by?
Oh, that's my man JD.
And then you got Lance.
There's
that was
Jim.
kind of just sitting there reading his phone.
Jim does all the work on the road, by the way.
Well, then you got Brown, who's hardly rattled, Dunaway, who's very rattled, and you got Lance, who is, I would say, unaware.
Or
oblivious.
The best was the last hour of the show. So
you see him on the phone, like Brown's having a panic attack to get stuff working, stuff smoking and stuff, and Lance just looking, going, "We ready to go?"
Well, in the last hour of the show,
what's around him.
We realized we were going to make it, and so the whole last hour of the show, they're talking to Chris Stewart. Obviously Alabama basketball.
Yep.
You think Chris Stewart, and so the whole thing was that. And it's like, I think the battery's going to make it. He was gone. The whole last hour of the show.
I mean,
he was gone. He packed up his stuff, and I don't think he left, but he just
he was in the lobby.
Packed up his stuff and left the studio.
Yeah, we had a pizza party.
Yeah.
He was late for the pizza party.
Yeah, one day Jim and Brown will get on a pizza party, but. It ended up being okay from Louisville, but after the way things were for the first couple rounds, when it was here, of all places, it's in Birmingham. You think it would be the best here, because that was the problem. If same thing happens, you can't rush back to the studio. Like Jim rushed back to the studio, I was getting ready to go on for him, and he walks in at the very last second, and then sits in there, and then I do the first hour with him until Brown gets here.
So on that day, who do you think had it worse, you or Taylor, when she had to drive down the way back because he was?
Oh, Taylor, 100%. Because look, here's the thing. I've hosted shows, I've been on air and stuff like that, so if I get thrown to the wolves there, it's like I can kind of half-ass make my way through it.
Right.
But I don't have somebody looking at me. Like, the only person who's looking at me is Rocky, and I can sit there and work with him and do everything fine. When she had to drive him back, I can just imagine, because he called me on the way to the studio and was like, hey man, connections, because I usually get here about 8:30, 8:45, we'll get here about the same time, because I don't have a lot to do before the show, and he called me in like a full-blown panic, like, you're going to have to host the first 2 segments of the show, I think he said. And then all of a sudden I heard, no, turn left, no, right, no, take two. Are you taking 280? No, you need to take 280. Like, and I'm like, are you talking to me? And then I heard he was talking to Taylor before Taylor was having to drive him back in a full-blown panic.
And the people panic differently, because I don't know what I would do, but Lance's panic was he didn't want to do from Louisville the show, because he was here. He didn't want to do, if the connection was lost, he freaked out and said, Taylor, you need to come in here. So Taylor sat in there and just didn't like I just need somebody in here, because with me, we're trying to troubleshoot what's going on. So I had to want to throw it to Taylor. So she's just sitting there. I think she was there for like three of the 4 hours. Taylor was in Brown's seat, just waiting to be like, I don't know what you want me to do, but I'm here.
Well, it's interesting that Lance gets so, I don't want to say rattled, but he gets like a little nervous if he's the only one.
Correct.
Yeah.
In the situation.
Because I've always thought
he started out doing the show by himself.
See, I always thought Lance was like the color guy.
95% of that was ads.
True. That's true. True.
But like I've always thought, like, because when I came in as an intern, I mean, it's been a little over 15 years now that I came in as an intern. It was Ian and Lance, and I always thought Ian's play-by-play guy, Lance is the color guy.
Yeah.
Like that's how I've always approached it, because I really wasn't into radio before that. I watched the games on TV like everybody else.
It's hard to be a color guy when there's no play-by-play guy.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like if it was just up to Kirk Herbstreit, like. He's done it long enough, he could do it. Lance can do it.
Right.
But, like, you just don't expect that. You typically expect Jim's going to be the one that brings it back. Like, before, Ian was the one that brought it back. Like, a Tony Curry could be the one to bring it back. And he's always been that secondary guy. So, you're right, when it gets to be just him, then it's like, I always have somebody to bounce something off of. and it's really hard. But anyway, not going to Houston because unfortunately Alabama lost. So as I do wear an Alabama hat here, I feel like I'm more free to just wear an Alabama hat here as opposed to when we were at Jocks. It was like you had to try so hard to be like so neutral and unbiased, and like Jim is just full on Alabama, doesn't care. Like I don't care. I'll wear Alabama stuff. Like Reade went to Alabama too, so like. I feel like we need to be more of our. So like Taylor's full on Auburn, like Scott's full on Auburn. Like I think it's better to be honest with actually who you are.
Let me ask this because we talked about this before. The passion everybody has for their teams, and Dunaway and Brown both laughed at watching Lance watch a Rams game. Has anybody watched an Alabama game with Jim before?
So here's the thing.
No, I haven't.
I haven't either. That's what
I've watched one.
Oh, yeah.
And it was.
He's always in the press box.
No, that is true. It was not on purpose necessarily. Like I'm going to Jim's house to watch a game, or he's going to my house to watch a game. Poker one night. We play on Monday nights, and this was, I guess, 2 years ago. I don't think it was last year. But we were playing on a Monday night, and it was during the Women's College World Series, which Alabama a lot of times makes it to the Women's College World Series.
Faust.
And they were playing, I think it was Florida State. And it was they had lost like a close one the day before. I don't remember. It may have been Florida State. I don't remember who they lost to. But they're playing in like an elimination game, and they got destroyed. It was like 7-0. They didn't do a single thing on offense. They got absolutely destroyed and got knocked out of the tournament. He's sitting there watching it on his phone as we're sitting at the poker table. So like, if we're sitting there playing cards, he'd look at his card and be like, yeah, fold, and go right back to his phone to watch the game. And when you could tell pretty much the game was out of hand, it wasn't going to be good. I mean, he started telling everybody around the table, like, this is worse. I think it was the year, I think it had to have been, I can't remember when it was, but he talked about how it was so much worse than when Alabama got crushed by Clemson in that championship game. Like, you expected that to be a good game, two of the quarterback and everything, and Alabama got destroyed in that game. And he's like, this blowout hurt so much worse. And, I mean, he was about to come to tears watching this random Alabama. It wasn't even like the championship. It wasn't even like the actual World Series. It was some random game in the Women's College World Series of Alabama softball, and he's about to cry. And when they lose, he shows all in, loses on purpose, and leaves. So he like go home and deal with it.
He likes watching and likes going to softball games, and he does it.
And that is one of the things for Alabama.
6 times a year at least.
Yeah, that is one of the things for Alabama is softball. But like, he's like, this hurts worse than that championship game, and everybody else is like, what? See, softball.
Not only that, I'd love to see Brown watch a Dolphins game. Because
I think because he's a thrower.
Well, that's what I was saying. But I mean, we saw in the Madden when you were
y'all blew that out of proportion.
I mean, he crushed that bottle.
Hit the wall.
And you can see part of it going out. And
on my PlayStation, by the way.
Yeah,
that was the only game I ever won.
I've not seen that kind of passion, and so I wonder if he's like that with Dolphins because I mean he is a big Dolphins.
He admits he says he throws the remote. He says embarrassingly I won't watch it with my kids or my wife because I get too animated.
Well, I'll tell you. I mean, and you kind of saw it with the Madden, but Lance playing those video games, talking about getting animated. You should have seen him back in the day with like the old Sony PlayStation or Sega Genesis. I remember coming back one time and he was living in a fraternity house in Tuscaloosa, and he had just got done playing and walked in, and there was like a drawer that was destroyed, and then you look over and there was like bits and pieces of
a controller.
Found out was a controller. So he gets really pissed.
Was it like a gambling aspect that made him so mad?
It's always a gambling aspect.
There always is that, but he hates to lose. Like, when he did the Beer Olympics at his house.
Oh yeah.
Go ask anybody. Like, he kept coming up with events until he won.
Well, I believe that.
I remember playing basketball when we were kids. If I beat him in basketball, all of a sudden he'd punt the basketball out in the woods. I'm serious.
Did you have to go get it?
Oh,
of course.
Yeah, of course.
The younger brother always has to go and get it. Everybody reacts to games. I'm fairly silent during games. I mean, I take it hard sometimes, and like I was frustrated after Alabama went out last week, but seeing how the three of them are with various things, I mean, we're fans, but that's.
Well, I just wanted to pull for a good game, and Reade was there when we were at Lance's for the kick six, and I'm sure there's so much money on that game, but there were so many Bama fans, and right when it started, like when he crossed the 50, I just started laughing,
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I was kind of pissed at you for that
because I was just
I was so vested in it.
I mean, just because it was just such a shocking moment, and I'm just sitting by the back by myself. I'm like, this is hilarious because this is a miracle. This doesn't happen, and just everybody like, because there was so much silence. Just like, oh, you're kidding me? He's gonna offsides? No. He's out of bounds, and then like it goes in the end zone. Oh my God, I can remember it like it was yesterday. So I can.
The way I cope with the kick six is when it happened. I was in my parents' house, and when it happened, the game's over. Everybody's screaming, cheering, fans rushing the field. I just stood up and said, "All right, I'll see you tomorrow." Walked out, didn't say a word, anything. I just went and I went home and I went to sleep, and I just pretend like it never happened. And in my mind to this day, it never happened. Like, you can't convince me. When you showed me, I just assumed, oh, that's weird. That must be from like the NCAA football game. I've never seen that before.
I remember I looked at my wife. We were dating at the time. I was like, "Get your shit, we're going." we left. Did not turn that TV on ESPN. I was not going to watch Sports
100%.
Center. We're not going to see any highlights.
Yeah, I always watch college football final or something like that.
Yep.
Not that night. Not taking it. But all right, so we're kind of all over the place to start this one. But I when it came to Louisville, obviously the assumption was that we would eventually head to Houston. I say we, the three of them would eventually head to Houston. And so Sean and I were talking, and I said, okay, well, we call Vegas then, because UAB had just won to go to the NIT championship. So after this, we're leaving to go to Vegas. The two of us are.
Yeah, go cover them.
Yeah, we got to go. If you want to come, you can. But we're going to Vegas. I like how they say, when we go to Vegas, they've said what they're going to Vegas for. I know we're not going to talk about whatever it is, but whatever it is, you're going to go to Vegas. You're not going to sit there and work 24/7 while you're there. I went for CES. I worked for Samsung for a year, and I went to the Consumer Electronics Show they have at the beginning every year. I work from 8 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon. But you know what? After that, you're in Vegas.
Yeah.
And I had all expenses paid because they paid for everything. That made Vegas even more fun. It's even more fun when you're on a work trip going to Vegas.
Well, no doubt. And back to the Houston thing, we need to talk about the scenario that was playing out of how are we going to get there, how are we getting equipment there.
Jimmy Martin was going to drive it.
Yes.
Yeah. Jim and Lance and Brown were going to fly, which is great. And then, so we got to get the equipment there. So Dunaway, our leader, offered himself to fall on the sword. I will drive a rental car. I'll drive my car to Houston, which is a short drive.
Well, I mean, I was sitting in my office and I could hear down the hallway Jim say, "You know what? You guys just fly. I'll drive. I'll take all the equipment."
I love driving by myself.
Right when he said
that,
Brown just started dying laughing and walked in. He goes, "Please tell me you just heard that."
The other nightmare was we were talking about in the first couple rounds before the round of 32 had Auburn won.
Oh yeah, trying to figure
out how to go to Kansas City and Louisville, and Lance didn't want to go to either one.
They did the old 92 Olympic triple cast. You remember?
Yeah. So we're trying to figure out how to do that, and then figuring out how do we get to Houston, how do we carry all the equipment. Alabama losing, that's the one positive from this. Is we don't have to worry about all that kind of stuff anymore. But it was going to be. I just know it would have gone wrong in Houston. I have no doubt it would have gone wrong.
There's no way it's going to be smooth.
Like, from a sales perspective, do you like selling road shows? I know it's like an extra thing that you can do, and obviously it helps fund the trips and all that kind of stuff, and we give extra benefit to our sponsors and all, but like knowing that from like a programming side it's going to be a train wreck almost every time.
Yeah, I mean, the beauty behind sales, when things go wrong, there's ways to figure out how to make things up to fix it.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty. I mean, what we do, part of starting this whole thing is we want to be at all these events and make it easier where we made the decisions. And the best way to do it, like I said, is bringing in the sales side of it, obviously helping fund the trip, but it's also really good for the clients as well. Speaking
of doing this, so there's a lot that has to be saved for the history of the show.
It's coming.
The 13-part Netflix series is coming at some point in the next decade.
We got the storyboard up, don't we?
Yeah. By the way, it's funny. They're talking about all the trips they were going on. Like, we got to go to Vegas. We got to go to Florida, we got to go here. We got to go there. We got to go to Maryland. All that stuff. And I was like, you have to do all that. And somebody said, y'all need a calendar to keep track of all the stuff. And I was like, they should see our calendar. We have a big calendar back there that is completely blank. We haven't written anything on
Nobody's touched it.
We should have a lot written on it, but we don't. But when it came to starting all of this, to not talk about the things that they want to talk about, however they want to cover it in their history of the show. I mean, this is something for a long time that we had talked about. I mean, just various and assorted ideas. did you ever think this would actually happen? That we would actually leave Jocks and actually come here and do this and have our own thing? And has it even been remotely like what you expected?
Well, you want to start?
No, not no. I would say I was highly skeptical. I had talked to Reade a little bit because we live close together, and we were quote unquote exercising, walking around the track, and we were throwing ideas off of each other. And it's just there was just so many moving parts that had to be just right for this to happen. And I didn't think I'm a little bit of a pessimist. Mine is the glass is not even half empty. It's usually broken. There's a crack in it.
It's leaking.
Yeah, and so I always thought like it'd be that what we're discussing would be so awesome, but I just don't think it'll ever come through. There's just everybody has to be on the same page, and that's impossible. And so no, I would have said I was highly skeptical.
But I think everybody was at a point something had to change.
Correct.
I mean, especially you.
Yeah.
You've had
Oh yeah.
conversations
Definitely.
a million times.
Definitely.
And I think you as well. I mean, like I all think, you know, we wanted to do. I mean, I think all of us wanted to do something in sports because there's so much passion for it, one way or the other. And I know you do enjoy sports as well, but it's not always your
Correct.
Your number one thing. But I think everybody was kind of at a crossroads of where do we go from here, and if we didn't, I think we would. I think I would have. I think you would have probably phased out a little bit and tried to do something different.
Because we were in the process of trying to start a family, and at the rate I was going, I would never be able to afford one kid, and so I was like, things have to change because I can't. I've been stagnant for a while. I can't advance myself. So something's got to change. I got to either be a full-time musician and not see my family at night, or make a move.
Well, it's kind of the same thing with you. I mean, I think you were the same way of like, I do want to do something in here, but what I'm doing right now is not really what I want to do.
Yeah, well, like the thing, my problem was I probably had 20 different jobs within like 7 years of working there.
The Swiss Army knife.
Well, I mean, that's a benefit when it comes to job security, but it also sucks because that means you always are the one people go to.
Well, and it's like here, though. You do about 1 million different things, and the thing is, like, when you're out of town, it's always a little bit shaky of an operation up here because one thing goes out, we're all kind of looking like, does anybody know how to do this? Does anybody know how to do it?
And you do the fun, hey Lunceford, hope your vacation's good. But before you, But hey, what happens if this camera's off? So that's always what it is.
There's one point for me that, like, it's the best thing that happened to me and also the worst thing that happened to me when I started doing the digital sales manager role. Like, because I took that job. Lance told me don't do it. Yeah. Like, because I was working with the Roundtable at the time. So primetime had just gone off, and they moved me into helping y'all in the morning, and which that's a whole different story we can get into. But
it was a fun month and a half.
Huh?
It was a fun month and a half.
Yeah. And while I was also getting married to somebody, they ran off the show. But so then we were actually celebrating ratings. We were at I don't remember where we were.
Standard.
Soho Standard. Yeah, the new place they had. We were
I
there.
wasn't there for that one. I was at the other one.
We were.
I went to the high end side. I went to the low end side.
Oh, were you? Oh, I knew we were missing somebody.
I know what I was talking about with you.
Well, we were. Well, there was a couple of things, but we were. It was like celebrating a good ratings book or something from the football season, and so they invited me, and then like it was awkward when I brought my wife who they had just run off, but like we were sitting there and she walked off to go talk to Rocky, and the market manager at the time sat down, just totally blitzed, and was like, "You have got to come be the digital sales manager," and I was like, the first thing I think when it's like you have to come help me with something is, well, how much money can I make from this?
Yeah.
Because like if you're
in need,
if you're that desperate,
you need to take advantage of it.
You need to pay me. So that was good, but literally I started March 1st, and 2 weeks later we were sent home for COVID.
Oh yeah.
And none of us ever went. I guess you still worked at the office technically, having to run the show.
It was a ghost town.
But none of us ever came back and worked full time in the office, like from the office side. Like you didn't, I didn't. We would still come back every now and then, but that was when it was like I felt like that gave me job security more at that point. but it was also a terrible decision because then COVID happened, and then you can't sell anything because all the businesses are shut down, and it became a train wreck. And like I was talking to somebody today, actually, I was like, look, the thing with like what we're doing now is if COVID were to happen tomorrow, like if another one of those were to happen tomorrow, we wouldn't skip a beat.
No.
It's just as far as like doing the show.
Right.
Now, all the businesses is shut down. It made sales impossible.
Yeah.
And I know that's a whole different story, but strictly from a like doing the show, there was a logistical nightmare to get all the shows done as well. And, you know, it seems like the Roundtable pretty much did what they wanted to with that and didn't even follow what they were supposed to. But, like, that was a train wreck trying to figure all that out, and we wouldn't have to worry about that as much here.
I don't think now we would not miss the show.
No.
Like, there wouldn't be anything that would really change you.
No, programming would go on because it's a tight-knit group. It's not like when you're responsible for 300 people or more, that becomes a problem because you feel like there's a liability upon you. Well, I don't want all these people coming to work that could get sick, but we're such a small group, and it's self-contained that we can do it, and I have full faith we could do a show.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting time, but I feel like the way what they're gonna say from like their standpoint is one angle, and this is a totally different angle from like especially from the sales standpoint for you. I know Lance does a lot of that too, but kind of how we looked at it from like the digital standpoint, the sales standpoint, all the behind the scenes logistics standpoint. That COVID kind of opened our eyes to a lot of that stuff, but then also helped it come to fruition too.
Well, and you saw it from a different side because you did a bunch of on-air stuff, and you've done a bunch of stuff forever on air. Then you moved into that role as digital sales manager, so you did the sales, but you also were part of management at that point. So you would kind of get to know the reason we're doing certain things. And it is. I mean, I think that's kind of the part of, you know, why we ended up doing this is because I think we saw some things in COVID. I mean, like, you know.
There were a lot of meetings I wouldn't have been in before that I was in.
Right.
After COVID, and seeing your face during the meetings or talking after the fact, it's like, what the hell is that? We could do this, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of what kind of drove us to this is you would see, you know, and not to get too deep into it, but you would see other people, other shows across the nation that would start doing their own thing, and they all did it to their unique way as well. And I think we kind of all saw a fit of we could do this.
Yeah,
it would be fun, and you know, and there's a lot of things that when we got started that we didn't think would be that important, and it turned out now that like, oh, we need to focus more on this than that, and it's, you know, and I don't think anybody kind of saw it from that part of it. It was hey, it would be really cool to own your own thing, to build something from scratch. That's what appealed to me. And you saw the way that people were like going from radio to a lot more podcasts, especially during COVID, because shows were interrupted. People weren't driving in their cars to work anymore. So you could kind of see that there was a lot of growth in that area. And
you saw a lot of people who may have been wishy-washy on this idea that didn't know just yet. A bombshell broke, I don't know when it was, but when Joe Rogan got the $500 million deal from Spotify. Yeah. And people were like, well, I guess you can, kind of, because people like Howard Stern's be like, he's like, you cannot make money in a podcast. He's one of those old school radio guys, still to this day at 68 years old, that says, you can't make money if you're a dude in the basement with a microphone, which what Joe Rogan started out as. You can't make money, and here he is making all that money. And then people say, like, well, maybe if you started your own thing, if I did it my way, but a little different than this way, change things up, that you have potential to grow, and that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, the other part of it is talking to certain people. They're like, no, you don't need to do that. That's not going to work. It's going to be very difficult to work that way. And, you know, I think the thing that separated was, you know, the three guys and y'all bring a different show than a lot of people, right? Yeah. And, you know, and I think y'all, you know, one of the big things for me is when COVID happened, you know, everybody had to be furloughed a week during a 3-month period, 1 week each time, and y'all are all asked to take furlough. Well, y'all decided as a group to carry on, just cut our salary by 25%, but we want to stay doing the show every day. And it really, I guess the part I liked about it is there were so many people that would email and talk about, like, you know, right now is a tough time, everything's depressing, but you guys do bring me some humor, and I think that was so big.
It is because it was a part of people's routine that,
Right.
you know, you lost your whole routine during COVID. Like everything, you're stuck at home, you're doing Zoom meetings and everything. And then if it was the round table from 6 to 10 a.m. would help people kind of keep that routine to somewhere where I can listen with my AirPods while I'm sitting at home doing my work now. That gives me some semblance of my old life.
Right.
That all this crazy panic attack stuff is happening outside, that we'd love to provide that instead of going dark or going national, I guess, going national radio in our slot while we're furloughed.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a good idea too. It's nice on them to sacrifice that pay to keep people engaged with us.
It's a good discussion. I sit there and listen to y'all talk about it.
Well, it's just, I mean, the whole thing is just, it's you know, that's what kind of made this special, is because you three and you know, doing it for as long as y'all have together, y'all built a loyal listening base, and it's continued to grow over the years. But it's partly because the way y'all act on the show is exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, when we finish the show and we have a meeting in the front of our office, that show carries all the way out there. It's the same exact thing.
Maybe a little more aggressive sometimes.
True.
Because when the mic's on, you kind of want to
Kinda
not
turn
hurt
it.
Yeah, I don't want to hurt your feelings that bad. But when the mic's off, I'm going all out. So it is. It's like brothers. It's
It
like,
is.
And you have to be. And I was telling Lunceford earlier in this, as I gave Dunaway some credit. He gets bashed on a lot. He is the punching bag, and he takes it. I mean, like, the guy takes it in stride. I mean, I know he is the root of it, but to be able not to like pout and like say, like, well, I don't like the way that you guys are making fun of me. I'm just gonna cross my eyes and pout. You guys do that. You do if you don't like what I'm doing. So it's just, I admire you, Jimmy. I know you're watching this. That you can take that, because most people can't take that amount of hits and still come into work with a smile on their face and doing their job.
If it was Lance,
he
would be beat up.
It happened today. I started messing with Lance about something. I can't even remember what it was. Him getting trash every day and leaving in the office.
Oh, yeah.
And him freaking, you didn't have my mic on. It's just like, well.
He still hasn't given it up about Scott thinking he's throwing the bracket challenge.
No.
Scott trashed him for that when he picked USC and they lost first game. And, I mean, he still is like, even today, because as we talk about the bracket punishment, it's like, well, Scott still thinks this. Scott's been gone for a week and a half and you're still talking about it. Like, come on. So Jimmy the professional always does a good job of getting in there and hurting the cats and getting the lives in there. And
He does.
doing everything he needs to do. All right, we've gone on probably longer than we need to, but the one thing I had is, from your perspective, since we hear a lot from their perspective, from your perspective, what's one thing that people probably don't understand when it comes to the transition that we made? They see them transition, but what's one thing in your mind that's been the hardest that people may not understand when it comes to transitioning from what we're doing in radio to this?
I think there's so many different things that go into it, and you look at things very differently now. Because there's, we were part of a large organization where we probably had 65 employees. And when we got started here, we started off with seven or eight. Started with 8, and now, we're at 10 with the intern. And it's been, I think the biggest thing to me is seeing everybody kind of pitch in on things that really aren't their responsibility, but everybody cares about it. Everybody in here and cares about the product, and so everybody's picked up something outside of their norm. I mean, I will say that this, and I think y'all kind of agree with this. We used to always give Brown a hard time about playing golf.
Yeah.
And I think when we
the biggest surprise for me is this, that because we would always say, if Brown's playing this much golf when we're doing the show at 10:30 a.m., he's gone to the golf course.
Yeah.
And he's going to be his own boss, and there's no way we're going to ever see him once that light goes off. And to his credit, I don't think he played golf the first year.
No, listen, we talked about it, and it was kind of a joke, and we talked to everybody, this is going to be a grind, because we're going to be learning new things, we're going to be figuring out problems and all that, and we got to keep everybody, motivated. And I'm shocked that Brown's probably played 5 or 6 times in a year and a half, like after the show. Now, I'm not talking about weekends. I'm talking about leaving here in the afternoon to go play. And sometimes it's for the show that he actually does it too.
And Dunaway's only done it, I would say, 600 times in the past 200 days.
It's amazing how they flip.
It is going tenfold.
It is.
tenfold. I think he's gone 2 or 3 times this week. It just started getting a little bit warmer this week, so it's just. And if that's what you want to do, if that's what calms you, I mean, I couldn't do that.
Well, I think it's also that had a long day at work. I want to go let off some steam. I'll go play some golf.
Yeah.
But it was funny because I thought we would be pulling Brown like, hey, we need you to do this.
Seriously, we need you to focus.
Well, and it has not been that at all.
No.
We have had all to take. We've had to all take on different roles. Like for me, it's the business side of things. Like people probably don't realize how many people there are behind the scenes that handle the business aspect of things. Like in radio, like we had a business manager, assistant business managers, like the market manager handling things. There's a lot of different multiple sales managers, stuff like that. But I mean, a lot of that has fallen on you to handle. And I know the first few months it was like, what the hell am I doing? But since then, it's been a breeze since then.
There's so many things that you really don't think about. I mean, especially like we talked about it today. There are friends at Simpio, how big they were in helping them, but it's still even though it's ours, it's still, we've got to treat it like a business.
Yeah.
Even though we don't want to, and we don't want to act like it is, it's still a business at the end of the day. And I think the part about it is, like, I mean, everybody has pulled their weight one way or another. And it's a lot of things outside their comfort zone or outside what they've previously done. And it's come together, and I mean, it's been rewarding, and I think we look at it, especially I do, like, when I get up in the morning, I'm like, okay, what are we going to do today? Like, it's been fun. Let's get going. Let's do something. Let's try something new.
You're motivated because it is. It's something that's you're in charge of. You have the dream of, like, even if you have with corporate, you have to go up these different ladders, and then they say no. This guy said no, but here's the reason why. But you can't do this. We at least can have the idea, and like the traveling thing, and say, like, it can be an actual. Something we can actually achieve. And sometimes in corporate, you can't do that kind of stuff. You can't do this kind of content and trash with saying certain words, even though, like, I think it's great that we can cuss as much as we want, but we don't do that. We don't try to go below the belt. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
And if it calls for it, but like that's the thing. We're not dropping F-bombs all over the place just because we can do it now. I think that's great that we've adjusted like that, that I can, my sense of humor is a lot dirtier than it was, and I try to finagle my way, and it's hard when you have FCC to not get a $25,000 fine to your company and be in charge of that. So I've enjoyed that we're in charge of content like that, and to not be leashed in a way.
You did just have to go through so many channels. Like I would have to get approval from like a program director, operations manager. Like go to it from a sales side, then get a market manager, triple sign off. Market manager. Then he'd have to go to his whatever Mark's title was.
It's 2 weeks later,
but, and like all those different people.
2 weeks later, oh, that thing was the day I came to y'all. And
but now I think the other thing is we all trust each other enough to where it's like you may pitch the idea, but it's like go do it.
Yeah.
Like try it out and see what it's like. I mean, we're just doing this because really we want to.
Right.
And it may turn into something, it may not. We don't know.
Well, I think the beauty behind it is we'll try something. If we think there's a better way to do it, we'll do it, and then we'll play off of that. If it worked, great. If it didn't, go back to the way and try to find a new way. I mean, think about when we got started, and you and I were on the phone with like some of these companies working on like our internal software that we have to use for certain things and all that. And I remember me and Lunceford were sitting there one day, and we were in the conference room down here because the suite was being renovated. and we called, and we were talking to somebody, and like, this is something we needed for the show that started on August 16th. And they were like, oh, I'm sorry, we can't help you until November.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at Lunceford. Oh, yeah. And I remember looking at Lunceford, and I'm like, oh, my God. Like, okay.
There were a lot of panic moments.
Oh, it was a big panic moment. I was like, okay, don't say anything to the guys. Let's figure this out before we tell them that this isn't going to work this way. And so we sat down, and like I said, the Lunceford came back and was like, and that's the other part of this, too, is when we talked about doing certain things a certain way or whatever, Lunceford's got a list of things that he's already thought through that's saying, oh, I got notes on that. Let me just show you. And then we'll run through it. And that's what's been fun about it. It's been... You've come up with ways that we can do things, and it's like you said on the show, even earlier today, when like, oh, we can do it that way. I can figure that out, how to make it go where not anybody has to be in this office.
Well, the Zoom thing for the fire alarm, I mean, that was like, that's a moment, that's a pivotal moment that'll be remembered on the show, is that when we went downstairs on Brown's phone and
Yep.
did 15, 20 minutes and just didn't go to dead air, even though we could have done that, but like just to like, well, why don't we just go downstairs and just stay on Zoom and just do the show and kind of like talk about what we see and everything, where it doesn't have to be sports headlines, although he tried to insert them in.
And I was on vacation, and I'm texting, and texting with Lunceford, not knowing what's going on really, right? Because I was on vacation, and Lunceford's like, all hell's breaking loose, we're being evacuated. And I'm like, what in the world? And so I'm looking at it, and all of a sudden, my wife pulls it up on the phone, and the very first, right when the phone pops up, you see Dunaway and Brown, there's a fire truck behind the parking lot. And Haley, my oldest, she looked over and she goes like, why is there a fire truck in front? What are they doing?
Yeah.
And it was like, hey, this is pretty damn funny.
Yeah.
Like, glad there was nothing serious, nobody got hurt, none of that. But it was fun to see, before it would have been shut down and like, we're not doing anything.
Yeah.
But it was funny to adapt and see it. It was awesome.
The best was there was a thread with you, me, and Scott. And so Scott's in Europe, not even paying attention to anything. And I'm sitting here texting him like, all hell's breaking loose. And it's like, what? It's like, just turn the show on. I can't explain it. That was fun. Yeah, I'm sure when you see the fire truck, it's like, well, that's it.
Well, and then people, and this is what I love, especially about what we do now, is how listeners and viewers can be a part of it through the chat and reading the chat. That was the funniest part to me.
Yes,
because they were like, you're a professional, you've got all your live reads in.
It's true, because that's another great thing is the chat. Like, that's such a pivotal thing to have, because you have direct instead of, still don't understand the damn tweet deck and stuff like that, but people have direct access, and they can, and we see it because we have a big TV screen that just scrolls through, that we will see your message. Sometimes it's hard to get to them because they scroll fast, but you have a voice, and instead of having to call and sit on hold and to get your point across, you can do it instantaneously.
Yep.
All right, we've gone on for like an hour. So
I gotta go watch my kid.
We'll wrap that up, but in closing, to tease for next week, I will say we talked about Brown not playing a lot of golf and how impressive he's been, and he has been incredibly impressive. And I mean, those first couple of weeks, especially once we got in our office and we had to kind of build everything out, super impressed with Brown. He has done nothing but impress me every single day since we started here, but that's not the way it started out.
Oh my! Yes,
that's not the way it started out. So
and Brown didn't even know this.
Nope,
Brown doesn't even know the story. He knows it's about him now because Jim would not stop pushing me, thinking it was about him. But yeah, our first impressions, we'll get to that next week or at some point. We're going to keep teasing it for years. But anyway, thanks to Shelby Auto Service, by the way, for sponsoring this, 664-4727, ShelbyAutoservice.com. Thanks to them for sponsoring the back room. Thanks a lot, Reade.
Yeah, thank y'all for having me.
Thank you for having me. Me too.
Thank y'all for having me.
My wife's calling me right now.
Bye.
I am. Look at that. Look at that.
Oh, there you go.
Hey, girl.